Take care of yourself. Welcome to Audiobook Soundz, Chasing Greatness, a space created for the moments when life feels heavy, when your mind feels crowded, when your body feels tired in ways sleep alone cannot fix, and when you realize that you have been showing up for everything and everyone, yet slowly disappearing from your own life without noticing it. If you are listening to this audiobook right now, it means something inside you is asking for a pause, not a pause that looks like weakness, but a pause that feels like wisdom, because there comes a time when you stop pretending you are fine, stop pushing through pain that has been building quietly, and finally admit that you cannot keep winning outside while losing yourself inside. This audiobook is called Take Care of Yourself, and it was created to remind you that self-care is not luxury, it is not selfishness, and it is not something you do only when you have free time, but a form of self-respect that protects your peace, restores your clarity, and helps you rebuild your strength in a way that does not destroy you in the process. Before we go deeper, I invite you to stay connected to this channel by subscribing, liking, and engaging, not because engagement is a routine, but because your environment shapes your mindset, and when you choose to consistently listen to long-form messages that calm your mind, strengthen your discipline, and protect your inner peace, you begin to grow naturally without feeling forced, and you start making better decisions simply because you are thinking from a healthier place. So as you listen, allow yourself to breathe a little deeper, release the pressure to fix everything at once, and receive these words slowly, because healing is not a race and self-care is not a moment, but a lifestyle that begins the first time you choose yourself without guilt. This is Take Care of Yourself, and today, you are not falling behind, you are finally returning to yourself. Chapter 1. The moment you realize you've been neglecting yourself. The moment you realize you have been neglecting yourself is rarely loud, dramatic, or sudden, because it usually arrives quietly in the middle of your normal routine, when you are doing what you always do, showing up, pushing through, managing everything, and acting like you are fine, yet inside you feel a strange heaviness that cannot be explained by the day alone. It often begins as a small feeling you try to ignore, like emotional tiredness, mental pressure, or a deep lack of motivation that feels different from laziness, because it is not that you do not want to try, but that you no longer have the energy to keep pretending that everything is okay. You may still wake up and function, still work, still respond to people, still carry responsibilities, and still do what needs to be done, yet there is a part of you that feels disconnected, as if you are living life from the outside, like someone who is present in body but absent in spirit. This is how neglect begins, because it does not always look like giving up, but sometimes it looks like being strong for too long, being available for too many people, and being consistent in everything except your own needs. You begin to notice that your peace has become rare, your mind has become loud, and even when you are resting, you are not truly resting, because your thoughts are still working, your stress is still active, and your emotions are still carrying weight you never gave yourself time to process. Neglect also shows up in the way you treat your own body, because you start surviving on anything you can grab quickly, you begin sacrificing sleep to meet demands, you ignore your fatigue because you think you can handle it, and you tell yourself you will fix it later, not realizing that later becomes a habit and the habit becomes your lifestyle. The moment of realization often comes when something small breaks your control, like a sudden wave of tears you did not expect, or a frustration that rises too quickly, or a quiet sadness that shows up for no clear reason, and in that moment you understand that you have been holding too much for too long without release. Sometimes it comes when you look at yourself and you feel unfamiliar, because you remember who you used to be, how you used to feel, how you used to dream, and you realize that somewhere along the way you stopped nurturing yourself, stopped listening to yourself, and stopped treating your needs like they mattered. Neglect happens when you become the person who is always responsible, always dependable, always understanding, always available, yet never supported in the same way, and because you are used to being strong, you start believing that needing care means you are weak, when in reality, needing care means you are human. You begin to live in a cycle where you give your best energy to people, tasks, and pressure, and you give your leftovers to yourself, and the tragedy is that you start thinking this is normal, until your body and mind begin to demand attention through exhaustion, emotional instability, and silent emptiness. The truth is that the strongest people are often the most neglected, because they are the ones everyone relies on, and because everyone sees them as stable, nobody notices that they are slowly breaking inside, including themselves. The moment you realize you have been neglecting yourself is also the moment you begin seeing how you have been delaying your healing, because you kept choosing productivity over peace, you kept choosing pressure over rest, and you kept choosing performance over honesty. It becomes clear that you have been trying to win in life without caring for the person who is doing all the work, and when the person doing the work begins to fall apart, everything else becomes harder, no matter how determined you are. This realization is not meant to shame you, because neglect does not always happen through bad intentions, but through survival, because many people learn to survive by being useful, by being strong, and by being needed, and they built their identity around carrying weight until it became difficult to put it down. You may have been taught that being tired is normal, that emotional pain should be ignored, that stress is just life, and that self-care is a luxury for people with fewer problems. Yet this belief slowly drains your spirit, because you were not designed to carry everything without recovery. This is why the moment of realization is powerful, because it is the first time you stop defending your own suffering and start admitting that something needs to change. You begin to realize that neglect is not only physical, but emotional, because you have been dismissing your feelings, minimizing your pain, and telling yourself that others have it worse, as if that should make you okay, when all it does is teach you to silence yourself. You begin to see how often you say you are fine when you are not, how often you smile to hide exhaustion, how often you force positivity when your soul needs gentleness, and how often you keep moving because stopping feels like falling. But stopping is not falling, because stopping is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of healing, because you cannot care for what you refuse to acknowledge. The moment you realize you have been neglecting yourself is the moment you begin to understand that your life does not need more effort, but more alignment, because your problem is not a lack of discipline, but the lack of self-preservation. You start to understand that self-care is not a reward for finishing everything, because everything will never finish, and if you keep waiting to take care of yourself after life becomes easier, you will keep waiting forever. This is why the reset begins here, not by changing everything at once, but by finally choosing to matter again in your own life. Choosing yourself does not mean you stop caring about others, but it means you stop abandoning yourself while you care for others, because love without boundaries becomes self-destruction, and generosity without rest becomes burnout. The first act of self-care is not always a spa day or a break, but a decision to listen to yourself, to respect your limits, and to accept that your body and mind are sending signals that deserve attention. It is a decision to stop normalizing exhaustion, stop romanticizing struggle, and stop treating your peace like something you can postpone. When you reach this moment, you may feel sadness for the time you lost, yet do not let that sadness become regret that traps you, because awareness is not late, it is alive, and the fact that you can see it now means you can change it now. You may also feel fear, because caring for yourself might require difficult boundaries, uncomfortable conversations, and a new lifestyle that others may not understand, yet the cost of neglect is always higher than the discomfort of change. So if you are listening to this and you feel that heaviness, that quiet exhaustion, that inner distance from yourself, let this be your moment of realization, not as a breakdown, but as a breakthrough, because this is where you stop surviving and start returning. You do not have to fix everything today, but you must stop ignoring yourself today, because the longer you delay self-care, the more expensive healing becomes. This is the moment you begin again, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming present, because presence is the first form of self-respect, and self-respect is the beginning of taking care of yourself for real. Chapter 2: Rest without guilt, because your body is not a machine. Rest becomes difficult for many people not because they do not have time, but because they have guilt, and that guilt convinces them that slowing down means they are failing, falling behind, or becoming lazy even when their body is clearly asking for recovery. Many people were trained to believe that being tired is normal, that exhaustion is proof of seriousness, and that constant pressure is the price of success. Yet the truth is that success without recovery becomes self-destruction, because a life that only knows how to push will eventually lose the ability to function with peace. Your body was never designed to perform endlessly without restoration, because the human system works in cycles, meaning you expend energy and you restore energy, you focus and you release, you build and you recover, and when recovery is ignored, the cost is paid through burnout, emotional instability, brain fog, irritability, and a quiet sadness that grows over time. Rest is not the opposite of progress, but the foundation of progress, because when you are rested, you think clearer, you decide better, you respond with more patience, and you produce better work with less strain, while when you are exhausted, even simple tasks feel heavy, discipline becomes unstable, and emotions become harder to manage. Rest without guilt begins when you understand that your value is not measured by your constant productivity, because productivity is something you do, not who you are, and when you tie your self-worth to output, you begin to fear rest as if rest will expose you, even though rest is simply the maintenance your life requires. A tired person cannot build a consistent life, because consistency needs energy, and energy needs recovery, and if you keep ignoring this truth, your goals may remain alive in your mind but die in your body, because the body will eventually refuse to cooperate. Many people say they want to take care of themselves, yet they rest only when they are forced to rest, meaning they wait until their health breaks down, their emotions collapse, or their mind becomes too overwhelmed to continue, yet the goal of self-care is not to recover after damage, but to prevent damage before it happens. Rest becomes powerful when it is planned rather than accidental, because planned rest protects your future, while accidental rest is often caused by burnout, illness, or emotional shutdown. You do not rest because you are weak, you rest because you are wise, because wisdom understands that your energy is your currency, and when you spend it carelessly, you become poor in patience, poor in clarity, and poor in peace. Rest without guilt also means learning the difference between rest and escape, because rest restores you, while escape avoids your life, and the difference is intention. Rest is when you allow your nervous system to calm down, your thoughts to slow down, and your body to breathe again, while escape is when you distract yourself endlessly, scroll mindlessly, and avoid silence because you do not want to feel what is inside you. Real rest is not always sleeping, because sometimes you need emotional rest, where you stop carrying everyone's emotions, stop over-explaining yourself, and stop forcing yourself to be okay for the comfort of others. Sometimes you need mental rest, where you reduce noise, reduce information, and reduce unnecessary stimulation, because your mind cannot be clear when it is constantly consuming. Sometimes you need physical rest, where you respect your body, stretch, hydrate, eat better, and slow down, because your body holds everything you refuse to process. Rest without guilt also means accepting that you do not need to earn rest through suffering, because the belief that you must work to exhaustion before you deserve recovery is one of the most dangerous habits a person can have. You deserve rest because you are alive, because you are human, and because your body is the vehicle that carries your future, and no one drives a valuable vehicle without maintenance and expects it to last. When you rest properly, you do not lose progress, you protect it, because you return stronger, clearer, and more stable, and stability is what makes long-term growth possible. This chapter exists to remove the shame from recovery, because shame turns rest into something you hide, while self-respect turns rest into something you protect. So if you feel guilty for slowing down, remind yourself that guilt is not discipline, and pressure is not strength, because real strength is knowing when to pause before you break. Rest is not you quitting, rest is you restoring, and when you restore yourself consistently, you become the kind of person who can keep going without losing yourself. And this is what it means to take care of yourself, not just by pushing through life, but by recovering inside it, so your mind stays clear, your body stays strong, and your peace stays protected. Chapter 3. Mental peace is a daily practice, not a lucky feeling. Mental peace is not something you randomly wake up with one day because life suddenly becomes perfect, because life rarely becomes perfect, and waiting for peace to arrive as a gift often keeps you trapped in stress, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion for far longer than necessary. When we call peace a lucky feeling, we treat it like weather, something that comes and goes without our control, yet the truth is that peace is a discipline, because peace is created by repeated decisions, repeated boundaries, and repeated habits that protect your mind from overload. Most people think peace will come when they finally finish everything, when the bills are paid, when the pressure reduces, when the relationships improve, and when life becomes easier, yet life always brings something new, which means if peace depends on a perfect life, then peace will always be delayed. This is why mental peace must be practiced, because practice means you create it even in imperfect conditions, and you protect it even when distractions are loud, and you rebuild it even after a hard day. A peaceful mind is not a mind with no problems, but a mind that knows how to process problems without being destroyed by them, because the mind can either become a home where you feel safe, or a battlefield where you feel trapped, and the difference is what you repeatedly allow. Mental peace starts with awareness, because you cannot calm what you do not notice, and many people live with constant internal noise simply because they have become used to it, believing that tension, overthinking, and emotional heaviness are normal. Overthinking is not intelligence, but overload, because a mind that is constantly thinking is often a mind that is constantly afraid, constantly uncertain, or constantly carrying pressure it was never meant to hold alone. Peace is practiced when you learn to pause before reacting, because reaction is fast and emotional, while response is slow and intentional, and the ability to respond instead of react is one of the strongest signs of self-control. You practice peace when you stop feeding thoughts that drain you, because not every thought deserves attention, and not every fear deserves a seat in your mind. Many people suffer because they treat every thought as a warning, every feeling as a signal of danger, and every emotion as proof that something is wrong, yet sometimes your mind is simply tired, overwhelmed, and overstimulated, and what it needs is space, not panic. Mental peace is also practiced through what you consume daily, because your mind is shaped by what enters it, and when your environment is full of negativity, noise, chaos, and comparison, your mind begins to reflect the same energy without permission. This is why peace requires boundaries, because boundaries protect your mental space, and mental space is where clarity lives. You practice peace when you reduce unnecessary conversations, reduce useless arguments, reduce constant explanation, and reduce the emotional responsibility of trying to fix everything and everyone. You practice peace when you accept that you cannot control everything, because control is one of the biggest sources of stress, and the need to control often hides fear. Peace grows when you focus on what you can influence and release what you cannot, because holding what you cannot control creates tension that never ends. Mental peace is practiced when you create simple routines that calm your nervous system, such as starting your day slowly instead of rushing, breathing deeply when your chest feels tight, stepping away from your phone when your mind feels crowded, and allowing quiet moments where you do not perform for anyone. Peace is also practiced when you stop overloading your schedule, because a crowded life creates a crowded mind, and a crowded mind struggles to breathe. You practice peace by choosing fewer priorities, fewer distractions, fewer commitments, and deeper focus, because focus is calming, while chaos is exhausting. Mental peace is not built by avoiding life, but by managing life with intention, because peace does not require isolation, it requires alignment. When your mind is peaceful, you still work, you still handle responsibilities, and you still face challenges, but you do it with steadiness, because your inner world is not constantly collapsing. This is why peace is a daily practice, because the world will always try to take your attention, your time, your emotions, and your energy, and if you do not practice protecting your mind, you will constantly feel scattered. Practicing peace also means learning how to talk to yourself differently, because harsh self-talk turns your mind into a prison, while gentle self-talk turns your mind into a safe place. The way you speak to yourself matters, because your mind listens, and what your mind repeatedly hears becomes what it repeatedly believes. If you constantly tell yourself you are behind, failing, or not enough, your mind will stay restless. Yet if you train yourself to think with patience, compassion, and clarity, your mind begins to soften, and peace begins to grow. This chapter exists to remind you that peace is not something you wait for, but something you build, because peace is created through daily choices, daily boundaries, and daily mental discipline. So even if life is noisy right now, even if pressure is heavy, and even if you feel overwhelmed, you can still begin practicing peace today, not by fixing everything, but by choosing one calm decision at a time. Because mental peace is not a lucky feeling, it is a lifestyle, and the day you practice it is the day you begin to take care of yourself for real. Chapter 4. Protect your heart from what quietly breaks you. Protecting your heart does not only mean avoiding obvious pain, obvious betrayal, or obvious conflict, because the things that quietly break you are rarely loud, and they are rarely dramatic, yet they slowly drain your joy, weaken your confidence, and make you feel emotionally tired even when nothing serious seems to be happening. What quietly breaks you is often the small emotional damage you keep normalizing, such as staying around people who constantly misunderstand you, remaining in conversations that always leave you feeling smaller, or tolerating situations where your effort is expected but your feelings are ignored. It is the way you keep forcing yourself to be okay in spaces where you are not safe to be human, where you must always be strong, always be understanding, always be available, and always be calm, even when your heart is carrying pain that deserves softness and care. It is the relationships where you are loved only when you are useful, the friendships where you are heard only when you are agreeing, and the connections where your presence is taken for granted because you are too loyal to leave, even when you know you are being emotionally drained. The things that quietly break you can also be your own habits, because emotional neglect is not always caused by people, but sometimes caused by the way you abandon yourself repeatedly, the way you ignore your feelings, the way you silence your needs, and the way you keep telling yourself that what you feel does not matter as long as life keeps moving. Your heart begins to break quietly when you stop honoring your emotions, because emotions are not weakness, but signals, and when signals are ignored for too long, your inner world becomes heavy, confused, and tired. Protecting your heart means you begin to take your emotional experience seriously, not in a way that makes you dramatic, but in a way that makes you honest, because the most dangerous pain is the pain you keep pretending is not there. Sometimes what quietly breaks you is the way you keep shrinking yourself to keep peace with people who are not peaceful, the way you keep over-explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you, and the way you keep proving your worth to people who should have respected you without needing a performance. It is the pressure of always being the bigger person, always forgiving, always being mature, while your heart is begging you to stop accepting what hurts you repeatedly. Protecting your heart means you stop confusing tolerance with strength, because being able to endure pain is not the same as being built for it, and constant endurance without boundaries becomes self-destruction. It also means you stop confusing attachment with love, because attachment can keep you loyal to what is breaking you, while love should make you feel safe, seen, and emotionally protected. The things that quietly break you can be the environments you stay in too long, such as places where you are constantly anxious, constantly competing, constantly proving yourself, and constantly stressed, because your nervous system can only handle so much pressure before it begins to shut down emotionally. It can also be the habit of comparison, because comparison quietly breaks the heart by making you feel behind in life even when you are progressing, and it makes you question your worth even when your path is still unfolding naturally. Comparison creates silent dissatisfaction, and silent dissatisfaction drains gratitude, and when gratitude is gone, you begin to feel empty even when blessings are present. Protecting your heart means you become more careful with what you allow into your spirit daily, because not everything deserves access to you, not every voice deserves to shape your mind, and not every relationship deserves the deepest parts of you. It means you begin to choose peace on purpose, not as weakness, but as wisdom, because peace is not what happens when life is easy, but what happens when your boundaries are strong. Boundaries protect your heart because they stop you from constantly being available for emotional harm, and they stop you from living a life where you are always recovering from people. Protecting your heart also means you learn to leave what drains you, even when leaving feels uncomfortable, because staying in what hurts you will always be more expensive than the discomfort of letting go. Letting go does not always mean walking away physically, but sometimes it means emotionally detaching from what you cannot control, refusing to beg for love, refusing to chase validation, and refusing to keep sacrificing yourself to maintain connection. Your heart needs protection because it is the place where your confidence lives, where your softness lives, where your joy lives, and where your hope lives. And if your heart is constantly wounded, life becomes heavy even when you are succeeding externally. This chapter is not telling you to become cold, distant, or closed off, but to become wise, because wisdom knows the difference between love and attachment, between connection and self-destruction, and between loyalty and suffering. When you protect your heart, you become calmer, because you are no longer emotionally fighting every day, and you become stronger, because your energy stops leaking into situations that do not grow you. And once your heart is protected, your mind becomes clearer, your decisions become better, your self-respect becomes stronger, and taking care of yourself becomes natural, because you are no longer trying to heal from the same pain repeatedly. So as you move forward, remember that your heart deserves safety, your spirit deserves calm, and your peace deserves protection, because healing is not only about fixing what is broken, but about stopping what keeps breaking you. Chapter 5. Boundaries are proof that you respect yourself. Boundaries are proof that you respect yourself because boundaries are the line you draw between what you allow and what you refuse, and the truth is that your life will always be shaped by what you tolerate, because whatever you tolerate repeatedly becomes your normal, even when it is draining you slowly. Many people struggle with boundaries not because they do not understand them, but because they fear what boundaries might cost them, such as losing people, disappointing others, being called selfish, or being misunderstood. Yet the cost of not having boundaries is always heavier, because when you live without boundaries, you become the person everyone can access, everyone can demand from, and everyone can drain, while your own peace becomes the last thing you protect. A boundary is not a wall built to hurt people, but a limit built to protect you, because protection is not hatred, and distance is not disrespect, and saying no is not cruelty, but clarity. When you respect yourself, you do not make yourself available for everything that breaks you, you do not accept disrespect just to keep connection, and you do not keep proving your value to people who only appreciate you when you are useful. Boundaries are proof of self-respect because self-respect is not only how you feel about yourself, but how you treat yourself, and how you treat yourself shows up in your decisions, your standards, your responses, and your willingness to protect your emotional space. Without boundaries, your days become crowded with other people's priorities, other people's needs, other people's drama, and other people's expectations, and in that kind of life, you may still be busy, helpful, and present, yet you will feel constantly tired, because your energy is being spent everywhere except where it should be spent first. Boundaries become necessary when you realize that peace is not found in being liked, but in being aligned, because being liked can be temporary, but alignment is what keeps you stable. Many people confuse kindness with access, believing that being a good person means being available, forgiving everything, tolerating everything, and always being the bigger person, yet being the bigger person while you are constantly bleeding emotionally is not maturity, but self-abandonment. A boundary is the decision that your peace matters, your time matters, your energy matters, and your healing matters, even when someone else does not understand it. Boundaries are proof that you respect yourself because they show that you have standards, and standards are what separate a stable life from a chaotic life. Because when standards are weak, everything enters your life freely, and when everything enters your life freely, you are guaranteed to feel overwhelmed. Some people want to rest, want to heal, and want to take care of themselves, yet their lifestyle remains open to constant interruption, constant pressure, constant emotional labor, and constant access, and this is why their peace never lasts, because peace cannot survive in an environment that keeps attacking it. Boundaries are not only about saying no to people, but also about saying no to habits, to distractions, to excuses, to overcommitment, and to emotional patterns that keep you stuck. Sometimes the boundary you need most is not against someone else, but against your own impulse to overgive, your own fear of disappointing people, and your own habit of explaining yourself too much. Self-respect grows the moment you stop negotiating your worth with people who do not value you properly, because the truth is that people will treat you based on what they are allowed to do, and what they are allowed to do is controlled by the boundaries you set. When you have no boundaries, you teach people that you will always adjust, always tolerate, and always make space, even when you are breaking inside. But when you build boundaries, you teach people how to treat you, not through anger, but through consistency, because consistency is what makes boundaries real. A boundary is not something you announce once, but something you enforce repeatedly, because people do not change because you explain, they change because the rules of access change. And boundaries do not require long arguments, long speeches, or endless explanations, because the strongest boundaries are simple, calm, and clear, and they do not beg for permission. Boundaries are proof that you respect yourself because they protect your future, since every time you waste energy on what drains you, you lose energy for what grows you. A person who respects themselves chooses peace over performance, chooses rest over overgiving, chooses healing over guilt, and chooses alignment over approval, because approval fades, but the consequences of self-neglect remain. At first, boundaries can feel uncomfortable because you may not be used to choosing yourself, and people may not be used to you having standards, yet discomfort is not proof that you are wrong, because discomfort is often the feeling of growth. When you start setting boundaries, you may feel guilty, yet guilt is not always truth, because guilt often comes from old programming, from people-pleasing, and from survival habits that taught you to keep everyone happy even when you are not okay. But the goal of your life is not to be constantly accepted by others while you silently collapse inside, because your peace is not optional and your health is not replaceable. This chapter exists to remind you that boundaries are not selfish, but necessary, because boundaries protect your mental health, your emotional stability, your physical energy, and your ability to keep showing up in life without losing yourself. When boundaries become strong, your life becomes lighter because you stop carrying things that were never yours to carry, and you stop giving access to people and situations that keep draining you. And when your self-respect becomes visible through boundaries, you begin to take care of yourself naturally because you are no longer asking the world to protect you, you are finally protecting yourself. Chapter 6. Stop performing strength and start choosing healing. When we say, stop performing strength, we are talking about the habit of looking okay while you are not okay, the habit of acting unbothered while your heart is heavy, the habit of smiling while you are exhausted, and the habit of carrying pain in silence because you have trained yourself to believe that being strong means never needing help, never slowing down, and never admitting that something is breaking you inside. Performing strength is when you keep showing up for everything and everyone while ignoring the fact that you are slowly losing yourself, because you have become so used to surviving that you started treating survival like success, even though your mind is tired, your body is drained, and your emotions are carrying weight you never gave yourself time to release. It is when you keep saying you are fine, not because you truly are, but because you are afraid that if you speak honestly, people will judge you, misunderstand you, or treat you like a burden, so you choose silence. Yet silence does not remove pain, it only hides it, and hidden pain does not disappear, it accumulates. This is why performing strength becomes dangerous, because the world may celebrate how consistent you look, how resilient you appear, and how dependable you are, but the truth is that you can be dependable and still be depleted, you can be disciplined and still be emotionally wounded, and you can be strong and still be tired of being strong. Choosing healing is the opposite of performing strength, because healing is not about looking powerful but becoming whole, and wholeness requires honesty, patience, softness, and the courage to admit that you deserve rest, support, and emotional safety. Choosing healing means you stop fighting yourself, because many people do not realize they are at war internally, forcing themselves to move even when they are drained, forcing themselves to keep giving even when they are empty, forcing themselves to stay in spaces that hurt them because leaving feels too hard, and forcing themselves to act normal because they do not want anyone to notice that they are struggling. Healing begins when you stop treating your pain like an inconvenience and start treating it like a message, because pain is not always weakness, but often a signal that you have been carrying more than you were meant to carry alone. Healing is also the decision to stop being addicted to pressure, because some people have been in survival mode for so long that peace feels unfamiliar, and when peace feels unfamiliar, the mind starts looking for something to fix, something to worry about, or something to prove, because it does not know how to exist without stress. Choosing healing means you give yourself permission to rest without explaining it, to breathe without guilt, and to pause without fearing that life will abandon you, because the truth is that life does not collapse when you slow down, but you collapse when you never slow down. It also means you stop romanticizing struggle, because struggle is not a personality, struggle is not a badge, and suffering is not proof that you are doing well, because many people are suffering simply because they never learned how to protect themselves emotionally. Choosing healing means you begin to protect your energy like it matters, because it does, and you begin to protect your mind like it deserves peace, because it does, and you begin to protect your heart like it deserves softness, because it does. Healing is often quiet, because healing looks like saying no when you would usually say yes. Healing looks like leaving what drains you even when you are emotionally attached. Healing looks like eating properly, sleeping properly, and staying away from environments that confuse your spirit, and healing looks like choosing your well-being over your reputation for being the strong one. Choosing healing also means you stop carrying everyone's emotions while ignoring your own, because many people are emotionally responsible for everything, always trying to keep peace, always trying to manage reactions, always trying to fix what is not theirs, yet while they are managing everyone else, their own heart is quietly breaking. Healing begins when you accept that you cannot be everything for everyone, because being everything for everyone will cost you yourself, and you cannot afford to keep paying that price. Choosing healing means you allow yourself to feel what you feel without judgment, because suppressed emotion does not disappear, it simply waits, and it returns through anger, exhaustion, anxiety, or emptiness. It also means you stop chasing people who cannot love you properly, because the constant need to prove yourself is not love, it is emotional hunger, and emotional hunger keeps you attached to what hurts you repeatedly. Healing is not a one-day decision, but a daily choice, because each day gives you the option to return to old patterns or to protect the new you. The new you does not need more pressure, but more care, not more performance, but more honesty, and not more endurance, but more alignment. This chapter exists to remind you that you do not have to earn peace by suffering, and you do not have to prove strength by bleeding silently, because real strength is choosing yourself when you are tired, choosing rest when you are overwhelmed, and choosing healing when you are done surviving. So if you are listening to this and you feel tired of being the strong one, let this be your permission to stop performing strength and start choosing healing. Because healing is not weakness, healing is wisdom, and the strongest thing you can do is finally take care of yourself for real. Chapter 7. Take care of your body, because it carries everything you don't say. When we say take care of your body, because it carries everything you don't say, we are describing the hidden way your body becomes the storage place for emotions, stress, pain, and pressure that your mouth never expresses, meaning even when you stay quiet, even when you keep smiling, even when you act like you are fine, your body still feels everything, remembers everything, and holds everything. Many people think their stress is only in their mind, yet the body is always involved, because the body responds to emotional pressure the same way it responds to danger, and when you are constantly worried, constantly overwhelmed, constantly forcing yourself to cope, your nervous system stays activated, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tighten without you noticing, your heart rate stays elevated, and your body begins living in tension as if it is always preparing for a battle that never ends. This is why some people feel tired even when they slept, because the body did not truly recover, it only paused, and while the eyes closed, the stress remained active inside the system. The body carries what you don't say when you swallow your feelings instead of expressing them, because suppressed emotions do not disappear, they convert into tension, heaviness, headaches, stomach discomfort, chest tightness, hormonal imbalance, low energy, and a constant sense of exhaustion that feels deeper than physical tiredness. Sometimes your body is not sick, but burdened. And what is burdening it is the emotional weight you have been carrying silently for too long. When you keep being strong without release, the body becomes the place where the pain settles, because the body cannot pretend, the body cannot fake peace, and the body cannot lie for long. Your mind may convince you that you can push through anything, but your body will eventually respond with signals, because every signal is a message that something needs attention. The body carries what you don't say when you live in constant pressure, because pressure forces the body into survival, and survival changes how you eat, how you sleep, how you breathe, and how you function. This is why stress can lead to overeating, undereating, insomnia, restlessness, constant fatigue, low motivation, and even emotional numbness, because the body is trying to cope with overload. The body also carries what you don't say when you stay in environments that are emotionally unsafe, because emotional unsafety creates constant tension. Being around people who drain you, being in places where you feel judged, or being in situations where you must always perform and prove yourself makes your body stay guarded, and that guarding becomes physical, meaning you may clench your jaw, tighten your shoulders, hold your breath, or feel heaviness in your chest without realizing it. The body is not separate from your life experience, because your life experience becomes your body experience, and this is why self-care cannot be only mental, because mental healing without physical care leaves you incomplete. Taking care of your body means you stop ignoring its warnings, because your body speaks through symptoms, and symptoms are not always enemies, but signals. It means you begin respecting sleep again, not as laziness, but as recovery, because sleep rebuilds the nervous system, restores emotional regulation, and repairs what stress damages quietly. It means you begin eating with intention, not because food is a trend, but because your body needs fuel that supports healing rather than increasing fatigue. It means you begin moving your body gently, not to punish yourself, but to release tension, because movement is one of the fastest ways to help the body let go of stress it has been holding. It also means you start listening to your body's limits, because many people break themselves not through one big mistake, but through small repeated neglect, like ignoring exhaustion, ignoring pain, ignoring discomfort, and calling it normal. Taking care of your body also means you create spaces of calm, because the body cannot heal in chaos. And if you are always overstimulated, always online, always rushing, and always emotionally available, your body never gets the signal that it is safe. Healing begins when the body feels safe, and safety is created through rest, through boundaries, through quiet, through hydration, through good sleep, through slower breathing, and through a lifestyle that stops treating exhaustion like a normal price of living. This chapter exists to remind you that you cannot outthink your way out of stress while neglecting your physical system, because your body is the home you live inside, and if the home is constantly tense, you will never feel fully calm. So when you hear the phrase "your body carries everything you don't say," understand that it is an invitation to stop holding everything inside while pretending you are fine, because your body has been translating your silence into tension and your unspoken pain into exhaustion. Taking care of your body is not just about looking good, but about feeling safe, stable, and present in your own life again. And when you finally care for your body properly, your mind becomes clearer, your emotions become lighter, and your healing becomes real, because you are no longer forcing your body to carry pain that your heart needed to release. Chapter 8. Let go of people, habits, and patterns that don't love you back. When we say let go of people, habits, and patterns that don't love you back, we are not telling you to hate anyone, become heartless, or shut the world out, but we are telling you to stop staying loyal to what keeps draining you, because loyalty without care becomes self-abandonment, and self-abandonment is one of the quietest forms of pain. Something does not love you back when it keeps taking from you but never restores you, when it keeps demanding your energy but never protects your peace, and when it keeps needing your patience while constantly breaking your spirit. Sometimes the thing that does not love you back is a person, and that person may not even be evil, but they are emotionally unsafe for you, because being around them makes you anxious, makes you feel small, makes you question yourself, or makes you carry emotional weight that you were never meant to carry. A person does not love you back when they only respect you when you are useful, when they only treat you well when you are quiet, when they only appreciate you when you are giving, and when they punish you the moment you start choosing yourself. You will feel it in your body, because you will feel tense around them, you will feel tired after speaking with them, and you will notice that you cannot fully relax, because your spirit is constantly preparing for disappointment. Letting go does not always mean fighting, arguing, or making announcements, because sometimes letting go is silent, meaning you stop explaining yourself, stop chasing closure, stop forcing connection, and stop trying to be understood by someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. Sometimes the thing that does not love you back is a habit, because habits can also drain you, even when they comfort you temporarily. A habit does not love you back when it gives you short relief and long regret, when it calms you for a moment but destroys you slowly, and when it feels good now but leaves you weaker later. This can be the habit of staying up too late to escape your thoughts, the habit of procrastinating because you fear pressure, the habit of emotional eating because you want comfort, the habit of scrolling because silence feels uncomfortable, or the habit of overworking because rest makes you feel guilty. These habits do not mean you are weak, but they do mean you have been coping, and coping is not the same as healing because coping keeps you alive, but healing makes you free. Sometimes the thing that does not love you back is a pattern, because patterns are deeper than habits, meaning patterns are repeated emotional cycles that keep returning in your life until you change how you respond. A pattern does not love you back when it keeps you stuck in the same pain, the same type of relationship, the same kind of disappointment, the same kind of overgiving, and the same kind of self-neglect, even when you keep promising yourself that it will be different this time. This can look like always choosing people who are emotionally unavailable, always becoming the rescuer, always being the one who tolerates disrespect, always lowering your standards to keep connection, or always staying where you are not growing because leaving feels too scary. These patterns quietly destroy self-respect, because each time you repeat them, you teach yourself that you do not matter enough to choose better. Letting go is not about becoming proud, but becoming honest, because honesty is the beginning of healing, and healing cannot grow in denial. Letting go means you finally admit that what you keep holding on to is not improving your life, it is only delaying your peace. It means you stop calling pain love, stop calling struggle loyalty, and stop calling constant disappointment patience. You can care for people and still let them go, because love without boundaries becomes self-destruction, and self-destruction is not love, it is fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting again, fear of losing connection, fear of being misunderstood, and fear of choosing yourself when you were trained to choose everyone else first. Letting go becomes easier when you understand that your future needs space, because growth cannot enter a life that is already full of what is draining it. You cannot pour new peace into an old environment of stress, and you cannot build a new version of yourself while holding on to old chains. This is why letting go is self-care, because self-care is not only doing gentle things, but also removing the things that keep harming you. Letting go is the moment you stop negotiating your worth, because the right people will not require you to lose yourself to keep them. The right habits will not punish you, they will strengthen you. The right patterns will not break you, they will build you. This chapter exists to remind you that sometimes healing is not adding more to your life, but subtracting what drains you, because subtraction creates space, and space creates clarity, and clarity creates peace. So if you are holding on to something that keeps hurting you, something that keeps draining you, or something that keeps pulling you back into the same emotional cycle, let this be the moment you begin releasing it, not with anger, but with wisdom. Because you do not need to fight what is wrong for you, you only need to stop feeding it with your time, your energy, and your heart. And when you finally let go of what does not love you back, you do not lose yourself, you find yourself, because you stop begging for peace in places that cannot give it, and you start building peace inside the life you truly deserve. Chapter 9. Build a life that feels safe for the new you. When we say build a life that feels safe for the new you, we are talking about creating an environment where your healing can breathe, your growth can stay consistent, and your peace can remain stable, because the new version of you cannot survive in the same conditions that damaged the old version of you. Many people try to change internally while keeping everything around them the same, and they wonder why they keep falling back. Yet the truth is that your environment trains your behavior, your routines shape your mindset, and your daily life is either supporting your healing or silently fighting against it. The new you is softer, more aware, and more intentional, but that new you is also sensitive, not in weakness, but in honesty, because once you start healing, you stop tolerating what you used to normalize, and that is why safety becomes necessary. Safety does not only mean physical safety, but emotional safety, mental safety, and spiritual safety, because you can be in a place where nothing is attacking you physically, yet your mind is always tense, your heart is always guarded, and your peace is always under pressure. A life that feels safe is a life where you do not need to perform strength every day, where you do not need to over-explain yourself to be understood, where you do not need to shrink yourself to fit into people's comfort, and where you are not constantly recovering from the emotional impact of your environment. Building safety starts with what you allow, because you cannot heal in a life that constantly drains you, and you cannot protect your peace if you keep giving access to people who do not respect your healing. A safe life is built through boundaries that are consistent, not emotional, because emotional boundaries rise when you are tired and disappear when you feel guilty, yet consistent boundaries protect you even when your emotions are weak. It is built through routines that calm your nervous system, because the new you needs stability, and stability comes from predictable habits that reduce chaos. This can look like having a slower morning, protecting your sleep, eating better, reducing unnecessary conversations, and creating space in your day where your mind can breathe without being demanded by everything. A life that feels safe also includes an environment that matches your healing, because the new you cannot keep growing in constant noise, constant negativity, constant pressure, and constant comparison. Sometimes safety requires distance from drama, distance from toxic conversations, distance from people who feed on your reactions, and distance from places where you always feel emotionally on edge. It also means you stop keeping yourself in survival by overloading your schedule, because a crowded schedule creates a crowded mind, and a crowded mind cannot heal properly. The new you does not need a life that proves something to everyone, but a life that protects something inside you, because peace is not built by showing the world how strong you are, but by becoming stable enough that you no longer need approval to feel okay. A safe life is also built through self-trust, because self-trust is emotional safety, and emotional safety is when you know you will not abandon yourself again. Self-trust is built when you keep promises to yourself, when you rest when you need to, when you say no when you should, and when you walk away from what hurts you even when it feels uncomfortable. Every time you protect your peace, you send a message to your mind that you are safe with yourself, and when you feel safe with yourself, healing becomes easier. Building a safe life also means being careful about what you consume mentally, because your mind cannot heal while constantly feeding on negativity, fear, gossip, and chaos. Your mental diet matters because what you watch, what you listen to, what you read, and what you repeat in your mind becomes your reality. This is why the new you must choose calm inputs, because calm inputs create calm thinking, and calm thinking creates calm decisions. A safe life also includes supportive relationships, not perfect relationships, but relationships where you are not punished for being human. Relationships where you can speak honestly without fear, where you can rest without being judged, where you can set boundaries without being threatened, and where your growth is not seen as pride. Sometimes building safety means changing your circle, because not everyone can handle the healed version of you, not because you became difficult, but because you became aware. Awareness changes standards, and standards change access. This chapter exists to show you that healing is not only internal work, but life design, because the new you is not built only by motivation, but by environment, routine, boundaries, and consistent self-respect. So if you want to stay healed, you must build a life that supports healing, because healing does not survive in chaos, and peace does not survive in constant pressure. Build a life where your nervous system can relax, where your mind can breathe, where your heart is not constantly guarded, and where your daily habits protect your energy instead of draining it. Because the new you deserves safety, not because you are weak, but because you are finally wise enough to understand that the life you live every day must match the peace you are trying to build inside you. Chapter 10. Make self-care your lifestyle, not a temporary mood. When we say make self-care your lifestyle, not a temporary mood, we are talking about the difference between caring for yourself only when you are tired, only when you are emotionally broken, or only when life becomes unbearable, versus caring for yourself consistently even when you feel okay, because true self-care is not emergency response, it is daily maintenance. A temporary mood is when you take care of yourself because you reached your limit, because you finally broke down, because you felt overwhelmed, or because your body forced you to slow down. Yet once you feel better, you return to the same patterns, the same overgiving, the same late nights, the same emotional neglect, and the same lifestyle that drained you in the first place. This cycle is why many people heal briefly, then fall back, then heal again, then fall back again, and over time the pattern becomes exhausting, because it feels like you are constantly rebuilding yourself from scratch. A lifestyle is different, because a lifestyle is a system, and a system does not depend on mood, motivation, or the perfect conditions to exist, but it runs because you decided it matters, and once it matters, you protect it like you protect anything valuable. Self-care as a lifestyle means you stop treating your well-being like something you do only when everything else is finished, because everything else will never finish. And if you keep waiting for life to calm down before you start taking care of yourself, you will keep postponing your healing forever. Self-care becomes a lifestyle the moment you understand that caring for yourself is not a reward, but a responsibility, because you are the foundation of your own life, and when the foundation collapses, nothing else stays stable. This is why self-care must be consistent, because consistency creates stability, and stability is what protects your mind, your body, and your emotions from falling into chaos again. A self-care lifestyle is not always big or expensive, because real self-care is not performance, but protection, and protection is often simple, quiet, and daily. It is waking up and giving your mind space before you give the world your attention, because your mental peace should not always come last. It is drinking water, eating properly, and respecting your sleep, not because you are trying to be perfect, but because your body carries you, and a neglected body will always carry you with pain. It is saying no early instead of saying yes and resenting it later, because resentment is often the cost of weak boundaries. It is reducing unnecessary conversations, avoiding emotional drama, and protecting your peace from environments that always leave you drained, because peace is not found in noise, but in intentional choices. A self-care lifestyle is also emotional, because it includes how you speak to yourself, how you process your pain, and how you treat yourself when you make mistakes. When self-care is only a mood, you treat yourself gently only when you feel calm, yet when you feel stressed you become harsh, impatient, and self-critical. But when self-care becomes a lifestyle, you learn to stay gentle even when you are under pressure, because you realize you cannot heal by attacking yourself. Making self-care your lifestyle also means building routines that support you, because routines remove the need for constant decision-making, and decision-making becomes heavy when you are already tired. A routine can be as simple as a fixed bedtime, a slower morning, a short walk, journaling, prayer, meditation, quiet time, stretching, or taking breaks before your body forces you to stop. These small routines are powerful because they tell your nervous system that you are safe, and safety is what allows your body and mind to recover properly. Self-care becomes lifestyle when you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable, because many people neglect themselves not because they hate themselves, but because they are afraid of disappointing people, losing relationships, or being seen as difficult. But the truth is that every time you betray your own needs to maintain someone else's peace, you are teaching your heart that you do not matter, and over time that lesson becomes exhaustion. A self-care lifestyle means you choose yourself without guilt, because guilt is not proof you are wrong, it is often proof you are finally changing. It also means you do not wait until you are completely drained to rest, because resting only when you collapse is not self-care, it is damage control. Self-care as a lifestyle means you manage your energy before it finishes, because your energy is your currency, and when you waste it daily, you become poor in patience, poor in focus, and poor in peace. This chapter exists to remind you that healing is not a one-time decision, but a daily practice, because life will always bring pressure, yet pressure does not have to steal your peace if your lifestyle protects it. The goal is not to become perfect, but consistent, because consistent self-care keeps your healing alive even when life becomes busy, even when emotions rise, and even when challenges return. So do not treat self-care like a weekend plan, a short break, or a temporary mood, because moods change and motivation fades, but a lifestyle remains. Make it your system, make it your standard, and make it your non-negotiable, because you deserve a life where you do not have to break down before you finally take care of yourself. And when self-care becomes your lifestyle, you stop losing yourself, you stop rebuilding from pain repeatedly, and you finally begin living from peace, because peace is not found once, peace is built daily. As this audiobook gently comes to a pause, I want you to remember that taking care of yourself is not something you do once and forget, but something you return to again and again, especially in the moments when life becomes noisy, your emotions become heavy, and your mind starts slipping back into survival. If this message helped you breathe deeper, think clearer, or feel more grounded, then stay connected by subscribing to Audiobook Soundz, Chasing Greatness, because this channel exists to help you protect your peace, rebuild your strength, and grow without losing yourself. You can pause here and reflect, or allow this audiobook to loop again, not because you missed something, but because repetition turns healing into habit, and habit is what keeps you consistent.